So if you're a dietitian currently working in a traditional role for dietitians, which might be one-on-one counseling or clinical or long-term care, and you want to start your own business, or you want to expand your current side hustle, like you want to start blogging heavily, or you want to start a YouTube channel, or you want to engage in social media more, this video is for you. Listening to these 5 podcasts that I'm about to go over should really motivate you and help you make that needed change. These 5 podcasts really excited me and made me really want to grow my business and think about what other ways I can expand my current business to get my content out to more people. Interested? So let's get started. The number 5 podcast is called the Dietitian Success Podcast, hosted by Krista. The mission of the Dietitian Success Podcast is to make it easier for dietitians, dietetic students to gain experience through online resources, community, and ready-to-use client resources. So what do I think about the Dietitian Success Podcast? I found this podcast really, really interesting. Krista is a great speaker and a great interviewer, and she's often able to ask questions and have really great answers from the people she's interviewing. One time she asked the dietitian what she was making with her side hustle, and the dietitian was very truthful about what she was making per month. And that kind of information can really benefit the other dietitians looking to branch out and move on to different roles than the current traditional norm for dietitians. Krista often in her podcast goes into the details of what it takes to become a successful dietitian in non-traditional roles, such as the online marketplace. She interviews many dietitians that have gone this direction and does a wonderful job getting useful information out of them. So podcast number 4 is the Leverage Podcast, hosted by Stephanie Claremont. The mission of this podcast is for health professionals to utilize their experience to better help the clients around them. Stephanie often gives quick tips on how to leverage your experience, conducts interviews of various health professionals, not just dietitians, and recommends strategies that you can use to better leverage your experience as a health professional to make an impact on those around you. The Leverage Practice podcasts tend to be fairly short and get to the point really quickly, which allows you to glean a lot of information quickly. I found many useful pieces of information in the podcast episodes I listen to. The host often talks about how RDs can leverage their expertise and their education to grow the business in the way they want. Stephanie often has a listener ask themselves questions about what goals they want to reach, financial, business related, how big do you want to grow your business? I found listening to this podcast really helped me explore different ideas on ways to grow my business. Next on our list is podcast number 3, Make More Money as a Dietitian, hosted by Kristen Diane Thomas. This podcast is really about making as much money as possible, what your mindset is, and what it needs to be to run a successful business. The Make More Money as a Dietitian podcast is really about being an entrepreneur business owner and what your mindset needs to be in order to be a successful one. Do you have what it takes? How do you get there? What characteristics do you need in order to be a successful dietitian business owner? I really enjoyed the way Christine tries to help her listeners, and this set her apart from the other podcasts in this list. Christine really focuses on the mindset of the dietitian business owner entrepreneur. You really need to ask yourself, do you have what it takes? Is this the avenue you want to go down? And what if you don't have what it takes? Well, that's all right too, she says. This podcast made me really think, hey, is this the way I want to go? Christine wants you to ask yourself what you're really good at. She goes step by step with questions that you should be asking yourself daily in order to grow your business and improve your business. Podcast number 2 on the list is the Freelance Dietitian, hosted by Julia. Julia started her career as a clinical RD before branching out and starting this podcast. Julia often invites other freelance dietitians that aren't working in normal dietitian roles, and interviews them to find out how exactly they're making money doing jobs that aren't considered a traditional dietitian job. I found the Freelance Dietitian podcast to be a great resource of information to dietitians that are not happy with what they're doing and they're looking to do something else. Julia often conducts interviews, which she calls fireside interviews, where she often has those interviewing walk through the process they took in order to start their own business and be successful. The way that Julia interviews is very laid back, and it allows the listener to get this information in a very easy, non-stressful way. I highly recommend this podcast to those RDs looking to continue to use their credentials in a different way than they currently are. And now for the number one podcast I'm listening to right now. It's called the Unconventional RD, hosted by Erica Jolson. Erica graduated with a master's in nutritional science and has been running the Unconventional RD podcast since 2018. She currently has over 12,000 followers in her Facebook group, the Unconventional RD community. This podcast is currently my favorite podcast, and I listen to it every chance I get. If you're a dietitian looking to make a change and you're looking for unconventional ways to make money, this is the podcast you want to listen to. Erica often goes into unconventional ways to make money, such as how do you use Pinterest to make money, blogging versus social media, which one is best, and how to maximize revenue on your website. Erica often goes into unconventional ways to make money, such as how do you make money on Pinterest? What is better, blogging or social media? How do you maximize revenue on your website? I get really energized when I listen to this podcast because Erica has so many great ideas constantly she's coming up with, and she explains her process and how she grew her business to what it is now. I recommend listening to all these podcasts. Every single one of them's got information that could be useful to you, and they're all a little different from each other. But if you're going to focus on one or you only have time for one, the Unconventional RD is the podcast you want to listen to. Erica has so much great information and she delivers it in a way that's really easy to listen. I can't recommend it highly enough. I really hope you found this video helpful, and let me know in the comments below what podcast you like the most. If this video was helpful to you in any way, please like and subscribe.